My personal life has remained pretty consistent over the years. I grew up in a Christian family with one younger brother and a very good family environment. We've been a very functional family, and it's a family that's still close and still together. I've been in Lutheran schools since preschool. I started at Living Word Lutheran, and that was preschool through middle school. And then after Living Word Lutheran, I went to Lutheran High Northwest. And after I graduated Lutheran High Northwest, I went on to get my degree at Concordia University, Ann Arbor. I grew up Lutheran, and I've stayed true to the Lutheran ideas ever since. I've always believed strongly in the efficacy and the inerrancy of the Bible, and I think that even had I not grown up Lutheran, I would have found those things to be true. So inside of the church, I try to do a lot of services for the church itself. I've done VBS leadership. I've done different drama and acting things for VBS every year. I've done worship, music, and things of that nature inside of the church. So I like to be able to use my vocal and musical talents to help the church in a musical way. I've done tech support for the church, which has included helping them with computer-related problems. It's included doing slides or audiovisual work, even things such as ushering and whatnot that are more common things. If there's any way that I can help the church, I usually prefer to try it and see whether or not that it suits me and whether or not that it suits the church. Outside of the church, I've also done different types of mission work. I went to New Orleans. I've done computer work outside of the church for different schools and things within my local area and within other things. My friends and I actually started a charity called the Gettys Project, where we would help bring computers and computer parts and technology into schools and churches, community centers, and places that couldn't really afford their own technology but were doing something good for the community. I've worked at Voice of the Martyrs, and I did that for 2 summers, 2 different mission trips during the summers, and that's sort of a program, if you haven't heard of it, that helps people in other countries who are persecuted Christians and bring them food or medical supplies or things that they might not have access to, more Bibles or religious materials that they could use. I've also done work in food pantries before, and I've done food deliveries to immigrants in Dearborn, and a lot of these Muslim immigrants needed food help, and we would bring them food or different supplies that they needed, maybe blankets and things, and at the same time we would talk to them about their faith and about our faith, and we would share things about our differences, and some of them actually did end up coming to Christ over a long period of time. So I like to do a lot of work both inside and outside of the church, and I think that any way that God can use me to further his causes is something that I'm absolutely open to. I would say that my vocational journey actually kind of began in middle school when I started becoming interested in the idea of becoming a teacher. I had a lot of influences in my life at that time, my teachers, my parents, other people that I respected and looked up to who told me that I would make a good teacher. And I really enjoy things like public speaking, and I enjoy relaying information, helping people, lots of things that are involved in the teaching career. And so as I went through middle school, these were things that were sort of in the back of my mind, but when I got to high school, I was thinking more about what I actually wanted out of a career and what types of things I would like to go to college for, and I decided that education would probably be a fantastic fit for my high energy, the things that I like to do, and it would allow me to help people and to spread the word of God in ways that most other careers just really don't offer. And so I decided to become an educator, and I went to Concordia University from freshman year on, knowing that I absolutely wanted to go into the teaching field. But since then, I've also worked in other types of jobs as well. I worked for 4 years in Concordia University's IT department, and so computers have always been a sort of hobby for me, and I've become very adept at using and fixing computers, and that's something that I've been doing for a very long time. I also worked for 2 summers at a place in Rochester called Par Pharmaceuticals that manufactures injectable pharmaceuticals, and I did some programming for them. I did some database management for them and things like that under their internship program, and that was a lot of really great experience too. Other than that, I've had observations through Concordia's programs at a lot of different schools, St. Paul, Ann Arbor, which is the Lutheran school just up the road from Concordia, and that's a middle school. Skyline High School, which is a public high school. Ypsilanti Public High School, which is a very different, lower income public high school. And I've been to Green Hill Elementary, which is it's a private school, but it's not a Lutheran school. So I've been doing observations and having teaching experiences in a variety of different places. Of course, my greatest teaching experience was last year when I taught for the entire year at Holt Lutheran Middle School, and I taught 5th grade through 8th grade there. I taught religion, social studies, 3D printing, and computer building classes. And that was a great experience, but currently they are changing around how their positioning is working. The principal can no longer teach mathematics. What they want to do now is hire somebody who can teach mathematics and religion, because I was social studies and religion, but both of the other middle school teachers in the building can also teach social studies. So since my degree is no longer quite as valuable there as it might be somewhere else, and also because I think I could find a better fit potentially in a different environment, I'm moving on from Holt and looking for different job opportunities. So discipleship is all about servitude and being able to serve both God and to serve other people in God's name. And I think the easiest way to encourage that is through modeling. When I act as a disciple and when I am continuously serving and helping my students, and I am serving their parents, and I'm serving the school, and I'm serving God with my actions, and composing myself as a Lutheran teacher should, then that sort of environment, that sort of positive environment that's been encouraged by the way that I act in the classroom and the way that I act outside of the classroom, the students will begin to pick that up, and as I model it, that's something that they can actually work on themselves. And I also will be encouraging with my students open communication about their faith. I want to be able to help them through any difficulties they may have, whether those are difficulties with their faith specifically, maybe difficulties that they have in their lives that are not directly related to their faith, but that can help them, because any way that I can serve them is also a way that I can serve God through my Christian worldview. So there are other simple ways to do this as well, teaching the students how to use technology in an appropriate way, teaching the students about how science can be looked at from a Christian perspective, about how all of their subjects relate to the wonderful creation that God has made. So discipleship is really always a Christian teacher's main goal, because as a teacher, especially as a Christian teacher, you need to be serving God, and you need to be serving your students, and you need to be serving everybody else around you. The job of a teacher is a job of servitude and of helping others, and that's the reason that I was interested in teaching in the first place, is because it would allow me to help others and to fulfill my mission as a servant of God in a way that I thought I could use my talents for. And so my ability to comfortably speak with other people, and my faith and my ability to want to help people very frequently, I think those are all things that can factor into how I could bring more discipleship to Trinity Utica. In my classroom, I like to focus a lot on respect, fun, and energy. First of all, there needs to be respect between the students and the teacher. There needs to be respect between the students and each other, and there needs to be respect, of course, between the teacher and the teacher's peers, all of the staff. And so creating an environment throughout the school, and especially in the classroom, of mutual respect between everyone involved is kind of the ultimate goal of a teacher in order to have proper classroom management. But also beyond that, I like to teach with lots of energy. I want to make sure that I have the students paying attention to me, that the students are enjoying themselves. I especially like to use music, acting, technology, lots of different helpful things to keep the students and to keep me engaged in the lesson the entire time. Kinesthetic and movement-oriented learning is a lot of fun, and I know that that's something that works very well for elementary grades when a lot of them have difficulty sitting still through a lesson, using that movement and the energy that they have in order to teach instead of having it seem to them as something that could be detrimental to the lesson is always a fantastic way to get them to learn. I like to do role-playing activities and different assignments like that, and so I'll just list a few of the things that I've done while I was teaching middle school at Holt that I thought were kind of fun and that third graders might also enjoy with some modifications. I used Legos with some of my students to build the Battle of Bunker Hill. We used clay to build a replica of the tabernacle and of Solomon's temple. We made a recipe book of Paleolithic recipes to learn about the diets of ancient people, and then we made the foods and got to eat them. We created characters from historical settings, and we would sort of explain what their lives would look like based on their age, occupation, and gender, their location, and I would have the students come up with these characters that would fit into a historical narrative, but they could still use their creativity to do it. I would have the students draw characters from things that they're reading, and that would allow me to not only understand how the students were viewing that book, but also how the students think in general. I would have students come up with songs that would help them for memorization and for learning, and we would sing the songs together. And I would also frequently have the students imagine their own lives from different perspectives using role-playing activities, and that helped specifically in social studies, but also in a lot of other subjects. Lutheran education should always be Christ-focused regardless of what class you're actually teaching. And a lot of educators have a lot of trouble trying to fit religion into subject areas that seem less conducive to it. But if you think about it in the way that God created the entire universe, God also created every single subject area, and therefore you can easily incorporate God's creation into every single possible subject area. So in social studies, I like to examine the history of the Jewish people, the Roman people, Persian people, Babylonian people, and Egyptian people in relation to their appearances in the Bible. And especially with history, I like to teach history from the standpoint of creationism, which would include, of course, the Great Flood and the Tower of Babel, the seven-day creation account, and how those things explain our historical narrative better than other opinions about like spontaneous generation and evolution and those things. And when you look back, especially at ancient history, you can see the impact that God had on the world in amazing ways that a lot of students don't know about now. In reading, I like to have the students examine how the characters in their books exhibit Christian values, or maybe they don't exhibit as many Christian values, and why that is, what things maybe those characters should change, how could those characters, make their actions better, what could they do in order to serve God more, things like that. Having the students sort of think about faith and religion from a literary standpoint. And also just talking about what it means to be a Christian in situations or circumstances that occur in literature. So maybe asking the students, well, what would you do in this situation that's arisen in this book? And maybe what would God want you to do, or what would God want the main character to do in this type of situation through what you're reading? For science, always, of course, I would begin with the creation story, and explain every scientific account through a biblical creationist lens. So that would be the impact of the flood on Earth and space science, all of the apologetic evidence for creation and the young Earth theory, biology through a creationist lens, and exploring life's diversity as support for God's infinite wisdom and design. Science is really the way that humans attempt to understand the mysteries of God's creation, and that's the way that I want to teach science to the students, is not just understanding the world, but understanding the world that God has created. And mathematics always seems like the most difficult subject to add religion to. But really, since science is how we understand God's creation, mathematics is how we measure and apply numerical value to God's creation. So many teachers find mathematics difficult to incorporate religion with, but mathematics is also just another way to view the beauty of God's creation, sort of through a different lens, through patterns and values and things like that. So what I want to do is make sure that the students know that mathematics is a tool for understanding what God has made, and for finding ways to potentially help others. You can use mathematics to build fantastic bridges or to create things that allow for you to serve other people in the world. And I would also love to teach them practical applications of math that will allow them to experience how they could help people using mathematics in a real life sense.